Glenn Greenwald, who was a journalist based in the US, he put out a tweet that said, for the truly enthused, get your Azov battalion merch here. Try to catch, and then mentions a link to a person's name, in between Guardian columns and Fox hits to get some advice on what looks best. He goes on to say, everyone in the US with a MAGA hat is deemed a literal Nazi who you're supposed to punch and or imprison, but liberals see actual real life Nazis in Ukraine and either swoon with admiration, arm them, or call you a Kremlin agent for wondering if this might work out poorly.
He's a colleague of ours. He's not, I don't know him personally, but he's a good friend of the friend that one of the colleagues that I'm traveling with here. And basically what I get annoyed about is, there's been a lot of a big controversy about the Azov battalion, who, yes, back in 2014, did a lot of thuggish things. A lot of their members did have quite far-right allegiances and alliances. And and I'm not trying to whitewash this group, but what I do want to say is that there's been this kind of portrayal by some people, and they're usually people who tend to take the Kremlin propaganda line, which basically says, oh, the Azov battalion exists, therefore Ukraine is a Nazified country. Now, the Azov battalion have a political wing. That political wing got 2% of the vote in the last election. They don't even have seats in the parliament. You know, every country has a kind of a far-right extremist movement, and a political one at that. And the idea that Ukraine has some kind of big problem with it. Now, what happened with this guy is that a couple of years ago, he did an embed with this group, and he said something like vaguely positive about them. Now, this is a guy who's currently been on the front lines with the official Ukrainian army for the last 3 days, you know, in the most dangerous places in Ukraine, risking his life. And I find it extremely frustrating to have people sitting in their armchairs overseas being like, he said some things that I disagree with politically a couple of years ago, therefore he's a bad guy, therefore he shouldn't, you know, I sometimes really dislike people who are looking at this conflict from afar and sniping and attacking journalists who are putting their lives on the line, if that makes sense. That's kind of what I was getting at.
So if you scroll down a little bit there, George, so to show people again who are just joining us, the actual Glenn Greenwald original tweet. So what you're basically saying is Glenn Greenwald in this tweet is actually accusing the journalist of being a far-right sympathizer, far-right columnist. That's why he's mentioning the Guardian and Fox. And you're
he's saying the guy's a neo-Nazi with absolutely no evidence other than the fact that he did an embed with this group of people. And an embed is a perfectly legitimate journalistic thing to do, right? And it just rubs me up, really rubs me up the wrong way, especially to do it on a day that one of our colleagues got killed in the field doing this kind of reporting, right?
Yeah, I just scroll down a little bit there, George, as well. Let's just have the actual final tweet other way, just to show Tom's tweet, so we can actually then put that out there as well, so people can see it if they want to see it. I'll read it out. It says, Glenn, have you considered coming out to Ukraine and using your considerable reporting skills to cover the situation on the ground, or will you be sniping from the sidelines at journalists like Ponomarenko, the journalist, risking their lives to cover war because of their old tweets? So, look, I mean, as you've just said, on a day where the one of your colleagues has died doing that exact job, I guess armchair critics are easy to find, maybe even exact lines at the when in truth, or in a lot of murky lines at the moment. And, you know, I'm not saying murky even for someone's like morality or reporting, but it must be pretty hard to draw a hard line sometimes when you're there having to, you know, understand everything. Whereas we're back here sitting on our couches and go, well, that's exactly how it is and that's exactly how it's not. Must be very different being in the field, not being able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, I want to say, for someone who has no skin in the game to say something like that. And also, I have to say, it's like, you know, Glenn Greenwald in the past has done some extremely consequential and important reporting, and no one can take that away from him. It just seems that over the last couple of years, he's taken for sure a very kind of right-wing turn, and a kind of, it seems to be parroting what seems to be a pretty pro-Kremlin line on this whole invasion. And this is one of the very few kind of military offences that I don't think there's much black and white in here. I think this is a very, very clear case of a country attacking another country because they don't like its politics, or they don't like its you know, geopolitical alignments, which is just not something you can do. and to see people try to even excuse this is something that I find quite distasteful. I'm not saying that Ukraine's always been perfect or done everything perfectly. There have been some, bad things that they've done, but that doesn't give the Kremlin the right to just say, I don't like this government, it shouldn't exist. This country shouldn't exist.